The topic of finance is controversial, and parents are often reluctant to have the discussion with their kids until a certain age. Some parents never get around to having the conversation, and this can lead to the kiddies developing bad and potentially financially damaging habits. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Reese, and in today's video, I am talking about why it is so incredibly important for a parent to talk about finances with their kids, and why it is also so important to get them into good habits surrounding money from an early age. I mentioned the topic of finance can be a controversial one to talk about, but it can also be incredibly boring, not only for the kid to learn about, but also for the parent to teach it. There are so many things that a parent needs to teach a child to prepare them as best as possible for adulthood, and finance often gets overlooked and put at the bottom of the list. This could be for a lot of different reasons, but the most common one that I have come across is that the parents generally will either be misinformed or are not able to accurately teach their child about finance because they don't have the understanding required to teach them themselves. And just to put some emphasis on this, I would say that teaching your kids about finance is just as important as teaching your kids to brush their teeth regularly. Think about it like this. You teach your kids about things that can have significant impacts on their lives, such as the importance of drinking alcohol responsibly and having sex, two things that have massive impacts on people's lives if they are not educated on the topics. So why wouldn't you teach your kids about something like finance, which can have massive impacts, massive negative impacts, especially if it's not taught properly as they enter early adulthood and definitely into their adult years? It's something that should be talked about and discussed from as early on as possible in their lives, and not only should the technical aspects be taught, but also the confidence about how to handle different situations as they arise concerning money. I'm going to get into some specific examples about how you could go about teaching a child about finance and the important things to cover, but just quickly, I want to touch on the age factor. I know people in all age categories, all the way up to mid-30s, as of right now, who still rely heavily on support from their parents with everything related to finance. I'm not talking about being financially supported, where parents are paying for their children to do things, although I do know people in those circumstances. What I'm referring to is parents doing the work for their kids that they should have learned to be able to do independently when they were younger. Things like paying bills, managing bank accounts, just as two examples. Things that these should be life skills that kids should be able to do by early adulthood. They should have a concept of what's involved, and they should understand the process that needs to take place to do something like pay a bill, like your water bill, your gas bill, your electricity bill, just to name a few. It is seriously concerning, especially for those over the age of 18. I watch them struggle to save. I watch them struggle to grasp the value and importance of investing. I watch them struggle to budget, and the big killer, I watch them struggle with their spending. I watch them struggle to build the discipline required to hold back from overspending and wasting their money, leaving them living a paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, which becomes unsustainable when a spanner is thrown in the works. Now, speaking of throwing a spanner in the works, let's use the best example possible, me, and a recent occurrence that happened to me. I went through a red light. Yep, I'll admit it. I turned right through a red light 0.96 seconds too late. How unfortunate is that? And I got pinned with a fine. And to not put the important information on the screen that's personal to me, I'll put a screenshot up with that redacted, but I was fined, wait for it, $597. Let that sink in for a second, because that is pretty damn unfortunate. Now, for people living paycheck to paycheck, I do not believe they would be able to afford a unexpected $600 bill. I feel like that would throw a big spanner in the works. It would cause them a lot of grief, and if they weren't prepared for that, they would be in trouble. Now, as someone who has an emergency fund and has prepared for unexpected expenses like this, I'm fine. Why? Because I've done the hard work to make sure I'm in a position to be able to pay for something like this without it affecting my life too much, other than the fact that, I don't know if you can tell from the tone of my voice, I'm incredibly salty. So I'm gonna throw this cheeky plug in here and say, please hit that like and subscribe button to the channel. It really does help the channel grow, and I'm gonna need a little bit of love to be able to pay that fine back. moving on. So what can you do as a parent or potentially an older sibling or a carer for the person that is in your household that is being raised and should be learning about these topics? What can you do to support them and teach them the importance of finance? The first thing I would do is to start slow and from the youngest age possible. Pretty much from when a kid can start learning to read, they start to learn everything. They're like a sponge and it will stick if you teach them right. It is extremely difficult to do this, but I absolutely have to emphasize it. Teach your kid the value of money. It's an extremely difficult thing to do when it's not their money that they're spending, but this is the most valuable lesson you can do, is to teach someone the value of money. Teaching them the value of money from a young age will introduce routine and set expectations when it comes to spending, especially, like I said, beginning where they'll be spending your money in the first instance, and then eventually as they start to earn income, what's going to happen is it will become their money that they're spending. If they already understand the value of spending your money, now when they're spending their money, they're going to be a hell of a lot more cautious and potentially do a bit more thinking before making, we'll call it silly or unnecessary purchases, which can affect them positively in the future. Off the top of my head, one scenario comes to mind that I really like to use as an example, and it's when I was a kid, my parents would give me maybe $5 to spend at the shops. I could go in and buy some chocolate bars or some lollies, but this would be it for this trip and probably the next 2 trips. $5 back then was a lot of money to be able to purchase chocolate bars and things like that. I'd be able to get several items. What I learned from a young age was to not spend it all in one go. I hear lots of parents go through these scenarios where they just buy them whatever they want without teaching them discipline. And what ends up happening is they'll spend the full amount because kids have terrible impulse control. They want something, they have what they need to buy it, they'll buy it. Whereas in my scenario, my parents taught me the value of actually thinking about my decisions, making a decision which would affect the balance that I had. Let's say it was $5 where I'd walk away with some change for the next trip. It taught me the value of money. It taught me the value of buying things. It taught me decision making. It actually was a really valuable lesson from a young age, which I have carried forward into my later years. Now, being a bit older, the decision process that goes into buying expensive things like these speakers, this computer, these monitors, lights, camera, instruments, microphones, the property that I purchased, all of these things took careful consideration into spending on them. For lots of people, they will just spend willy-nilly. They might buy multiple of the object. I could ramble and ramble and ramble. The point and the most important thing to understand, if you take anything from this video, is teaching a kid the value of money is one of the best life lessons that you could possibly set them up with. Finance in general is going to play a part in your kids' lives. And if they get started with the best head start possible, they have nothing but power to succeed being put in their laps. Moving on from that, another method that I really like, this one kind of comes into play when a child starts earning an allowance. They might be doing chores to earn money. They might be working a casual job through a family member. They might be doing jobs for the neighbors, like walking the dog or mowing their lawns, bringing in some form of small money. I like the 3-part method, and this is where you set up 3 accounts for the child, 1 for giving, 1 for saving, and 1 for spending. 1 for giving. No one has ever become poor from giving. This is an important life lesson you can teach a child, and it's quite easy to put this one in place. Giving can be very rewarding. It can set children up with characteristics that are valuable to their development, such as self-esteem and pride, things that will carry forward as they grow older. 1 for spending. I preach this a lot on my channel, and it's very important to understand that money earned is money that should be spent and enjoyed within reason. The key thing here is to teach discipline, is to teach restraint, and to teach a child how to budget. Allocating a certain amount of money out of each payday that they receive is a very important life lesson, because what it then does, it introduces a decision. When a child wants to make a purchase, they need to decide, they need to figure out if it's worth spending the allocated amount of money they have on said thing. It also teaches them discipline, because if it's too expensive this payday, they might need to save up a little bit more to be able to purchase that item, that object, that service, whatever it is they're looking to purchase, which then in turn teaches patience. very, very simple ways to introduce these qualities that make a good person, that make a successful person. And it's so simple because you have all the power. You might have to listen to some tantrums, put up with it. Don't enable bad behavior. I can't emphasize that enough. And finally, 1 for saving. Learning to save for the sake of saving is an invaluable lesson a child can learn. It is one of the most important things a person should be able to do, assuming they are in a position to do so. I know not everyone is as fortunate as some others, but for the majority of people who can do this, this is absolutely worth teaching. When it becomes a habit for a child to just put away a percentage of the money they bring in every single pay without any thought, this will just become a way of life. It will not be missed at some point. I myself have been in this position for over 10 years now, where a certain percentage of my pay goes away into specific accounts for specific reasons, which don't get spent for a very long time. This to me is like second nature. I have just basically programmed my mind into doing this, and it has been very effective in allowing me to propel myself forward in life. I have been lucky enough to be able to buy what I want when I want now because my finances are regulated. It elevates my way of life. It's why I'm so passionate about talking about finance, and it's something that I need to preach. It's something that is so important to teach your kids. And the outcome of doing this makes it an unconscious way to save money, to have a buffer in emergencies, such as my red light fund, to have what's known as an emergency fund, to be able to save for big and large purchases like a car or a house, things that take time, if not decades to save for. The other benefit to this as well is as they increase their income, the savings rate will grow, whilst also their level of discipline will be rewarded per se, because they will now be able to spend more out of the larger amount of money they're now earning. The way I would go about introducing these systems is to make it fun for the kid to learn. How do you do this, you might ask? Lots of different ways. You might introduce chores for them to be able to do around the house, which might add value to you because they're actually doing some work that you don't want to be doing yourself, and you can reward them through the method of payment. It's generally something that from a young age isn't going to cost you a lot of money, but it will be valuable to them to learn. From here, what you would want to do once they have the routine down is actually introduce goals that are achievable for the child. And when they achieve them, reward them for doing so. I don't know what you could do. You could buy them a gift. You could take them out for a dinner. You could take them out for an experience, whatever it might be, but you reward them in a way to show them that their hard work is worthwhile putting in the effort. And just to name a few other topics worthwhile teaching them from a young age, especially as they start entering those early teens into early adulthood years, would be things like the power of negotiation, how to invest and why it's important to invest, how to distinguish the difference between a want and a need, how to budget, and the importance of understanding debt and staying on top of it. These are all critical topics which will feed into their development, especially as they enter the real world, where these types of scenarios will play a day-to-day part of their lives. And the most valuable thing you can actually get them to do is to physically do the work. Once they reach the right age, whether it be early teens or older, actually walk them into a bank to open their own bank accounts. Actually hand them a bill and show them how to pay that bill with your credit card or with your debit card, or however you pay your bills. Actually get them to do the process, because once they do it enough, it will just become second nature. It won't be overwhelming, it won't be complex, and they will have the skills they need to then go out into the big world and do it themselves. Think about it from their perspective as if you were teaching them to drive a car. You cannot drive the car for them to learn. They need to actually drive the car. They need to hold the steering wheel. They need to use the gears if they're learning in manual. They need to actually do the work. It's the same scenario with finance. Get them into the habit of doing it like it's second nature. And to just briefly extend on this, the value coming out of this is not only related to finance. All of the people I know who were brought up with similar financial education have succeeded in lots of different areas other than finance. I'll name one example. I know almost everyone who had the same fundamentals as myself growing up, learning about the importance of money, the value of money, how to discipline myself, building good habits. All of the things that feed into this have fed into other good habits and things that people have been successful in. I'll name one example. It's a topic for another video, but health and fitness is one really strong example. It's a trait that is very common amongst other people who have had a lot of success in finance due to their upbringing and understanding of the topic. it feeds into other things. It grows like wildfire because once you have the fundamentals down, you can pick them up essentially, like the habit building, the discipline, the understanding and importance of doing something on repeat every single day, every single week, every single month, on and on and on. They pick it up, they move it over to a new topic, whether it be learning something else, a language, an instrument, being healthy and fit, and it just does the exact same thing. It just sets them up for success in so many different ways. To wrap this video up, at the age of 27, I really just want to take a moment to thank my parents for giving me the fundamentals I needed. They were not rich people. They were not the wealthiest people you would ever expect to see. They didn't own businesses, and they just worked everyday jobs and earned pretty average money, if I'm not going to lie. But they taught me the importance and gave me what I needed, gave me the tools that I needed to be able to go out into the big world and succeed in this topic in particular, which has, like I said, fed into other topics. So thanks, mom and dad. I had to put it on this forum. Like I said, this YouTube channel is a library for me and for the knowledge and understanding in topics that I really want to cover that are valuable to me. And yeah, I guess this is the first time I've kind of said it on the big screen. It's all because of the fundamentals you gave me when I was growing up regarding the topic. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's video. This one was an important one for me to make. This was not just a filler video. I really, really believe in the message in the video. I really want to put emphasis on the importance of doing this. And I think I have done that throughout. So if you made it this far in, thank you so much. Please hit that like and subscribe button. I really do appreciate the support. Do the work. You will see the benefits as your kids grow older, as your siblings grow older. It is a valuable, valuable thing to do. And with that being said, I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.